Hello and welcome to the lesson on PowerShell, how to manage the Active Directory domain services using PowerShell. So this is really in the, we're going to be using command lines, scripting instead of the GUI interface to go and create users, groups, containers, and things like that. Okay, so before we get into the PowerShell and how to use some of the commands, there's a couple of things that we need to know. For example, the distinguished name. Let me just bring this up a little bit. You'll see a lot of this when we practice actually some of the commands later on. You'll see a little bit, but we have to get the definition out of the way. So DN, the distinguished name, is a unique database name for every Active Directory object made up of a hierarchical sequence relative distinguished names connected by commas. For example, here, let me just, I opened up um, the server. Let me just go to the server and go to the users and computers. And if you remember in the New Jersey organizational unit, there's an organizational unit called users, and there are the two users, John Doe and Mike Smith. By the way, if you are in a different view from where we left off, you probably were in the advanced features, so take that out. Okay, for now. So the distinguished name for Mike Smith would be a common name, CN, Mike Smith, comma, New Jersey users. We're going backward. Or OU, New Jersey NJ users, comma, OU, New Jersey. He's under New Jersey, comma, OU. Actually, this is DC because this is the XYZ.local is an organizational unit because that's the root, that's the top. So DC stands for um, domain component, not domain controller, which a lot of people think. And then you have to also write DC local. So going backward, if you take a look at it, for Mike Smith, his common name, that's what the CN is for. Common name is Mike Smith, comma, OU NJ users, OU New Jersey, comma, DCXYZ, comma, DC local. Don't write DCXYZ dot local. You always have to write XYZ, comma, DC local again. Is that clear? Anything in the quote, you could have spaces here, or you don't have to have spaces if you don't want to. It's not going to matter. Capital letters or lowercase letters, it doesn't matter either. So lowercase, it's not case sensitive as either, the PowerShell. All right, if you remember the administrator, his common name administrator is located in users under DCXYZ, DC local as well, right? So the quotes, we put them in quotes because the spaces means something when you're doing scripting, spaces and commas. So you have to put it, if you put them in quotes, then PowerShell will just ignore and just these spaces and even capital and lowercase letters. Well, that's not the case, but the commas and spaces will just be ignored. Okay. Now here's a couple of things to remember. CN users is not an organizational unit because users contain there's not an OU. So if you remember, and I think we mentioned that previously, users right here, you would not write an OU, you would write a CN, a common name. All right, because this is just a container, or you can say container name. Doesn't have to be a common name, right? So if you have under users, if you have anybody, you would write the administrator and see administrator. We did not write OU, we wrote container name users because the users, as we've discussed before, is not, it doesn't have that little icon as an organizational unit. So you would write CN as the administrator, right? It's a common name administrator, comma, common name users, comma, DCXYZ, comma, DC local, right? So that is your distinguished name. In the old There are some traditional tools that you could use to create users and modify objects within Power within for the Active Directory. So you could use the CSVDE command line. This is really to import or export Active Directory objects using the .c, the comma separated files. You can download them in one shot. Typically we export them into we can export them into an Excel file and vice versa. Or you can use the LDiffy command line to import, export, modify, or even delete AD objects. Some DS commands for scripting, maybe use dsadd, dsget. This is when you add a user. dsmod for modify. dsrm is for remove or move an object, dsmove. But anyway, most of this is well not going to be used. We're going to be using the Windows shell, okay, the window PowerShell commands. So for example, here are some commands that you should be familiar with. So I made a whole bunch of them that you should have on hand with you. All right. And by the way, before we even continue, you may be asking, why do I need to use the command lines to create users and create a container or organizational unit or set securities or any of that? It takes a lot of work. You may be typing something by a mistake. And well, there are two things. There are some engineers out there that rather use PowerShell commands. They love to use them. That's what the old engineers from the old days. But the other really important thing to do that PowerShell allows you to do is for scripting. So let's say you want to create multiple users, multiple groups on different trees. So you can write a whole bunch of commands, create a patch file, a script, and then execute it. So you don't have to keep typing them. You don't have to go through the GUI and just even with the templates. That might take time, creating users over and over, thousands of users. You can create a script that can does that automatically for you. Populate, the Active Directory really quick with one script. You can have one big, huge script that can create a whole tree for you in one by executing one command. So somebody can just sit down and create all of these commands and just by hitting enter, calling the script and hitting enter, and it will just create all of these, users, containers, groups, set security, all in one shot can be done. In other words, or you can have that as a backup. You can take all of these you can take your whole tree. By the way, the whole tree, because the good thing about whatever you can do in PowerShell, you should be able to do in the GUI and vice versa. So once you have if you've done everything in the GUI, you can actually get the script, take it out and save it. So in case something happened and your active tree got blown out, you can actually run the script and you can recreate everything very, very fast. So that's the power of PowerShell. So, I mean, there's a whole bunch of different commands. Like I said, everything that you can do in the GUI, you'll be able to do in PowerShell. All right. So, so that's that. That's why I really wanted you to know at least how to do the basics of PowerShell. So, for example, how to create and manage users. So here's new dash add user that will allow you to add a new user, right? Set the user, remove a user, add an account password, unlock an account. So all of these commands that you can do from the command prompt. The parameters, for example, after you type add a new user add, so the parameters after it, you can set an expiration date, account password, set a home directory, for example, his given name, his surname, his last name, where is it located, the path. So this is really the parameters. In other words, right after you type the new add user account, you type in dash account expiration date, for example, and then you can set when is it going to be expired. All right, so we'll practice some of these commands and you'll see what I'm talking about. Uh, group accounts. So here's a whole bunch of different group accounts that you can create. New group accounts, set the group account. You can modify the properties on an existing group, for example, remove a group that you've created, and so on. And the parameters for the group accounts, for example, the name of the group. So when you write, for example, new add group account space, then you dash name and you give it a name, right? So the name is the parameter. What the scope is of that group, the display name, and managed by who, and the path, and so on. And you can actually also set some account name that defines the pre-Windows 2000 name for the group, right? So all of these can be done. Um, Manage computer accounts. So here's a whole bunch of different commands that you could do to manage computer accounts, create computer accounts as well. You know, this is again the parameters for computer accounts and organizational units. Finally, we'll get to how do you create organizational units, the different types of command that you should know. And also here's, by the way, removing an organizational unit. And remember that little checkbox that to prevent the OU from being deleted accidentally. So we're going to practice that later on. All right, so these are very good to have on you. So please make sure that anytime get familiar with these as much as you can. I will give you this. You don't have to type any of that. If you want to type it, that's fine. But I want you to remember that, as you will see also by in PowerShell on the command line, all of these are available. I mean, you don't have to remember a lot of commands. You just need to remember what the command starts with, really, and they're all right there for you. But it's good to have this. At least these are the basics and the most common tasks that you would use as a system administrator. But remember, you should be able to do all the above commands in the GUI, right? Because the GUI is built around PowerShell and vice versa. All right, so let's go now to the PowerShell itself. All right, the first thing that I want you to do is go ahead and click on the Active Directory users and computers, right? And make sure that you're not in the advanced feature, so unclick that if you are. All right, I want to keep this because I want to show you that when I am using the command line, we can actually see it happening here, right? Okay, so you can minimize that. And I want you to right click on a PowerShell and Windows PowerShell ISC. All right, so that's the integrated services. We want to make sure that we can use that. All right, so now let's say I want to create a new user. So I'm going to type new dash. Remember, you're doing this with me. So when it comes up and I have a whole bunch of choices, new, let's say add, and let's create an organizational unit, organizational unit. See, it comes right up. So if you just typed you got two choices, object or organizational units. You can scroll down and hit the tab key. I'll be doing that a lot. Space, and let's call it a human. Let's call the organizational unit. Give it a name. So let's call it human resources. That's going to be um, the name of the organizational unit. All right. So human resources, new organizational units. I want you to minimize that. And if I go to the users, now you don't see it right in here, but if you go right here and click refresh, and actually it is not, I don't see it, but it should be still not in here unless, is it under users? No. And it should be logo. And we hit refresh. And there it is, human resources. Took a little while for it to refresh, but it came up, right? Okay, so let's go back to the PowerShell. I'm sorry. Okay. New, that's where I should be. new add. There you go. Add user. Okay, hit the tab key, space. I'm going to call it human, right? Resource user. Okay, space, dash. I'm going to say I want dash the given name, space. The given name is going to be human resource. One word, right? Dash. And let's say the surname, space, his last name, in other words. Let's call it user, space, dash, the display name. What is it going to show up as on the screen when you look at it? We're going to call it, I'm going to put that in quotes because it's going to have some spaces, right? Human resource user, end quote. And now we are going to tell it where is this user going to be located in what container. So I'm going to write dash path space, and I'm going to put the path in quote. That's where the distinguished name comes in. So we want to put it in the organizational unit called human resources, right? Dash space under under the XYZ domain component equal to XYZ, that comma. And I'm not even going to put a space. I want you to see that you can actually take it. Domain component equal local, end quote. So that's a lot of writing. All right, hit enter. Now, you see, if there's no error, that means it did it. Everything was done correctly. If you minimize this and you go and you go under human resources, double click, you'll see the human resource user, right? So there's your user under human. You just created one. Now look at it. Look, you see that little arrow going down? That means this user has been disabled. Okay, going back, we'll continue. Let's try. Let's set a password. So I'm going to write set dash add account, set add, look, add, well, not add, add, oops, I'm sorry, add account, let me see, account, okay, set, and I want add account password, right? That's what I want. Hit the tab key, and I want human resource user that's the username, right? Space, and I'm just going to hit enter. And now it's going to say me, do you want the password? You know, what's the new password? Just hit enter. Now it says, what's the desired password that you want? So just put in a password, hit enter. Going to ask you to repeat the password again. And do it again and enter, and it took it. So now the user has a password, and it's in there, and they'll be able to change it if you can do it later on. I can't really verify that for you. All right. So do me a favor. If you did this and you hit enter, that's fine. So here's your first screenshot. Please take a screenshot of this. So, okay, and put that in Microsoft Word. So now let's enable. Okay, again, let me just go back here to let you know that this user is disabled because it has that arrow down. So we're going to enable it. So we're going to write enable dash add enable a dash add account, and it's going to be human resource user, end quote, enter. Um, Human resource user, not human add, I'm sorry. Okay, enable dash um, add account. That's what you want. And it's going to be human resource user, end quote. Okay, so now it took it. You see no errors. If I go right into the user account and you see, and you hit refresh, and the arrow, the down arrow gone, so that's now the user is enabled, and he'll be able to use his account. All right. All right. Now let's do some groups. Let's see some commands using the groups. All right. So let's create a new group. Let's call it new dash add. New dash add group. And let me just bring this down a little bit so we can see a little bit more. Right. New add group. Let's call it human resources. We'll put capital letter for R. Space users. Okay, sticking with the human resources. Oops. Okay, now they want the scope. I should have done that. So let me, you could have hit enter. I could have typed dash scope. I should have done that. So you know what? That's what I really wanted to do. So let me just hit the upper arrow key to repeat the command. Put a space, put dash, the path, space, where do I want it to be? Let's put the distinguished name. I want it under the organizational unit called Human Resources, comma, under the domain component XYZ, comma, under the domain component local, end quotes, space, put dash group. You want group scope, and we want the group scope to be global. Okay, put a space, dash, and let's put group category, and we want that to be security, right? And bingo, and it took it. So let's double check, no errors. So when we go in here and under human resources, if I hit refresh, where is that refresh? And refresh, and there you go. I don't even have to get up here and see it. So there's the group called human resources users. Now let's make this a member of this group, right? So we'll go here and let's add, type add, dash add group, hit the tab key, add group member, right? I want human resource user. I'm sorry, users, human resource users, human resources, I called it right. I just want to make sure, let me double check. Yeah, human resources users, right? And by the way, see human resources, I could have wrote lowercase letter if I wanted to. Okay, so what I'm saying is add the group member under human resources users, space dash members, and I want which member? I want human resource user to be in there, right? Well, let me make sure human space resource. It's not human resource user. So that's my mistake. All right, hit the upper arrow key, and all I have to do is just move this, because otherwise I could not find it. And there you go. Now he's a member. And if you go right in here and you double click on it, you go to members, you see that the human resource user, I should have used different names. It gets really confusing. That has been added to the group, right? All right, beautiful. It's nice, isn't it? All right, now let's continue. Now let's try to remove. Let's try to do some removing. By the way, before you remove anything, since you are right here, double click on this, go to members and move this over. You know what I want you to do now, right? Take a screenshot. So take a screenshot of this because I want to know that you were able to create the human resource and make sure that this command is shown underneath that you actually did it, right? I want to see this command and I want to see that it's done in the GUI. All right, now you can hit cancel and minimize this. Now let's start removing. So let's start remove dash. So what do you want? Add group. So add group. Okay, I want to get rid of the group called human resources. And see, that's the problem. I can't remember. The group human resources users. Okay, hit the upper arrow key. And I get in here and I'm going to type users. It says you want to get rid of everybody that's in there. You hit enter, yes. Remember, it removes it and it removes the users. The user itself doesn't get removed, right? So if you hit refresh, okay, it just keeps holding on. I'm just going to do the refresh this way. Now the group is gone, but the user's still there. All right, beautiful. So now let's try to remove dash add user, and I want to get rid of the user. Let me just, because I keep human resource user. So human resource user. All right. Yes, I want to get rid of him. He's gone. Now let me remove the organizational unit human resources. So let me just minimize this. Oops. Okay. And go in here, refresh. It's gone. Now I want to try to remove the organizational unit, right? Human resources. So I'll go back in here and I'll type remove dash add, not add group, add organizational units, and it's going to be called human resources. And is it go? And if you put a space, you got to give it a path. Where is it going to be located? So you write path. Actually, if you just type that organizational unit and you hit enter, it doesn't take it. It doesn't like it. So you're going to say you can't do it because human resources. Actually, we got to do it this way. Organizational unit. You have to only write the where is it located. So you're going to write OU space human resources. I don't have to give it the name, I'm sorry, dash. It's going to be under DC XYZ, comma, DC equal local, and quotes, right? So this is where the organizational unit is, and I want it to be removed. I hit enter. It says, are you sure you want to remove everything and everything in the organizational unit? You hit enter, but you still have an error. And that error is why. If you remember, if you go on View, Advanced Features, and I want you to right click on the Human Resources, Organizational Unit, go to Properties, and if you go to Object, that's why. The Protect Object from Accidental Deletion is there. So I want to remove that using PowerShell command. And then I'll be able to delete the Human Resources um, organizational unit. So let's do that. So I want to type set dash add organizational unit, right? Space, which is located equal organizational unit equal human resources under DC XYZ under DC local. Go. That's the organizational unit. That's a location of it. I want to type dash protect from accidental, and I want it to be 0. If I wrote a 1, that means it's a check. 0 means uncheck it. And I hit enter. It took it. All right, so it took it. That means if you go to right click on the human resources organizational unit, go to properties, and actually I have to do refresh first. So let's do refresh, and then we'll go to properties, object, and we see that it's unchecked, right? And here is your last screenshot. So take that and put that in there, okay? And before you are done, do me one favor, because we want to really close everything. So let's remove it first, all right? So right here, now I'm going to hit the upper arrow key. That's not the command I want. I want the remove command. Remove the organizational unit. Bingo. It says, do you want to get rid of it? And now it removed it, right? And if I go right in here and I hit refresh, and actually we're supposed to do the refresh, and now it's gone, right? You see that it's gone. Actually, and do me a favor, get out of the advanced features, and you see that the human resources organizational unit is gone. All right. I know it's a lot of work, the PowerShell. So, like I told you, this is really scripting. This is the beginning. It gives you a good hand on to at least do some. You can say that you are familiar with how to do scripts now, creating them in a batch file if you wanted to. But now you can actually use PowerShell to create users, objects, organizational units, and so on. All right. So until the next class, next lesson, keep up the good work.